Okay. Okay, so let's return here. I'm sorry. Okay, so we got line number 2, right? Line number 3. We have Allah, Ole, Ola, or Ne'elam. All right. Line number 4. Aram, Meor, Ro'eh, Ulam, and Nut. Line number 5. Elul, Achbar, Moreh, Morah, Alu. Moreh is a male teacher. Morah is a female teacher. Remember, in Hebrew, our words always have a gender. And a roeh is a shepherd, and an achbar is a mouse. Line number 6. Na'ama, Anan, Noam, Lema'an, Lema'ancha. Lema'ancha, for your sake. Lema'ancha. All right. Now, the word ha'olam can mean world or universe. It can also mean eternity. All right. It depends on how it's being used. So when we read a bracha, when we start off a blessing, right, we will read, let's read at the bottom of the page, the beginning of the bracha. We have Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. So blessed are you. They prefer to use Adonai instead of Lord, our God, ruler of the universe. And again, technically, the word melech means king. Right? And certainly in the ancient world, God was always referred to in masculine terms. However, there is no gender for God. Gender and sex doesn't exist. In the pagan world, yes, there were gods and goddesses, and that was meaningful. But because there's only one God, there's no meaning to gender. In the ancient world, masculine language is always used for the more powerful.
Don't we refer to God as king?
As I said, Melech, king.
But that's gender.
But
You
you could. What I'm saying is that you're in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, and still today in modern Hebrew, and they have to struggle with that for those who want to deal with it. Everything is either masculine or feminine. You can't there's no such thing as neutral. There's no word it in Hebrew. Okay, it's either she or he. Okay, so yes, masculine language was used. Masculine language in the ancient world and up until modern times was generally considered to be greater language for power. Men are powerful, women are weak. That's not my opinion, okay? So the language, most languages use the masculine form when you want to talk about its power. But for example, in the pagan polytheistic world, you had male and female gods, right? And some of the females were pretty strong.
Doesn't he have like female attributes?
Well, God has whatever attributes God has, they're all inclusive. All right. Now, there is a term that is used when talking about the divine presence. When we want to say God, as it were, is right here with us, imminent around us. The word used it comes from the word shochein, to dwell in a place, to be indwelling. So the indwelling of God, when his presence was in the tabernacle in the wildernesses, as described in Exodus and Leviticus, etc. we talk about in the later terminology is the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is a feminine word. So when we speak of God, Shekhinah, we are talking about the feminine aspect, as it were, of the one God. The word for mercy, rachamim, derives from the word rechem, womb, because the mother is assumed to be more merciful. That's the assumption for the etymology. So we talk about God being rachamim. It's still using masculine language, but it's using a metaphor or a simile, whichever metaphor, I guess, for the divine concern, which is a feminine idea. Now, in the modern age, obviously, there's been lots of struggles over language and over the use of masculine language versus feminine language, inclusive language, and all the things that we're going through today. And without taking sides on the various issues, you have to recognize the meaning of the words and then how you want to translate. So, for example, the word for God, the personal name of God, Yud He Vav He, which we do not pronounce, we substitute the word Adonai. Adonai means my Lord. It's masculine again. Okay? In most translations, up until recently, if they're going to translate it, would translate it as Lord. Okay? In Orthodox circles, it's become very standardized. Maybe even was early. I don't know what point in history became standardized that way. But instead of saying the name of Adonai, because we only say that when we're saying a blessing, they will say Hashem, which means the name. Many modern translations, in order to avoid the problem, transliterate it to Adonai. That's how it is here. Similarly, the word melech, while technically means king, it's a title for the ruler. In Hebrew, there's masculine and feminine forms of it, but it still means the ruler. So in order to avoid masculine language, you will find a lot of modern translations substituting ruler for king. It's the same thing. It's just avoiding the issue of language, problematic language for some circles. But the ultimate thing to remember, God is neither male nor female. And as a matter of fact, even trying to assert attributes of God according to Maimonides, that's a no-no. Because once you say something positive about God, you limit God. So for Maimonides, the Rambam, you can only say what God is not. Not that God knows everything, but God is not lacking in knowledge. It's like, because once you say something positive, you limit. So-and-so is a billionaire. No, he's not. He's a multi-billionaire. Right? But if I say he's a billionaire, he's not a 2-billionaire. So language is important in many different ways. And philosophy, modern philosophy spends a lot of time and effort and a lot of language on language. Yes.
But it still seems like God is king,
Well, that's because we have it's been inculcated in our way of seeing the world.
No, I don't know.
It is. It would mean king, a ruler. Which one? Or well, that is a theology. That is a very traditional Jewish theology. that God is the ultimate authority, the creator, ruler, dictator, plenipotentiary, whatever term you want to use, that is a very traditional theological approach. The others have perhaps more limited understanding of the divine, but that is indeed why the superlatives are used: king, ruler, etc. And ruler of the world or ruler for eternity, eternal ruler. Could be that way as well. Okay. All right. So let's turn now to page 21. Where we have some review. Okay. So line number 1. Hu, yo, lo, ol, telem, rotem, omer. Line 2. Becha, bach, orcha, orech, he'am, amen. Line number 3. Noam, neum, Elohechem, alai, olam. Line number 4. Arba, arba'a, aleinu, alechem, ole. Line number 5. Melacha, bameh, romamu, holech, holechet. Again, because the two segals at the last two syllables, the accent shifts from the last syllable to the next to last syllable. That's an ironclad rule. When you have two segals, the accent shifts back about a syllable, a syllable. Follow? Okay, we've mentioned that before. Okay. It's not holechet, but holechet. Nachon? Okay. Line number 6. Tai, umatai, boche, otam, otchem. Line number 7. Otanu, umora, haran, yoram, I, Adonai. Or Adonai, if you want to go good in that Sephardi pronunciation. I remember I was davening one time a number of years back, and somebody asked my son about my Hebrew, because I tend to pronounce the name of God the way I first learned it when I was growing up, and that's the more the Ashkenazi way rather than the Sephardi way. Okay, line number 8. Nelech, Torah, umatan, matana, aleichem. Number 9. Natan, lanu, et, Torato, emet. Line 10. Baruch, ata, Adonai, Eloheinu, melech haolam. Okay. Now we're beginning to have a lot of words in here that are real words that you're going to find in the Siddur, in the prayer book. Okay. Asher natan lanu Torat emet, who gave us his true Torah. Okay. All right. So now we are working on the bracha, on the blessing for wine. Wine is fruit of the vine. It's interesting. We don't say a bless. We don't use the word yayin in the bracha, which is actually the word for wine in Hebrew, but we use the word pri hagafen, the fruit of the vine. All right? So now the letter Pei. Notice again, we have a letter has a dot in the middle. The dot in the middle tells you there's an air stop. So that's going to be like the letter P. Right? So when there's a dot in the middle, you're going to put your lips together to say the P. So you put your lips together. You know, or if you got a nice little outboard motor where you're going after some bass fishing. Okay. A walleye. I don't go fishing anymore. I don't go fishing anymore at all. Speak up. No boats, no money. Okay. Line number 1. Okay, 1. Pa, po, poo, pay, pie, po, p. All right. 2. Pen, ben, pot, par, pach, pain. Don't inflict too much pain on me. All right. Line number 3. Par, ma, pa, ma, pa, poor, parat. Line number 4. Abba, paro, pa'am, mapam, liparan. Line number 5. Poel, pu'al, po'al, amen, parochet. You know, and in the synagogue, that's the curtain in front of the ark. You'll hear it called a parochus or parochet. The correct pronunciation is parochet. All right, line number 6. Para, peirot, berura, berera, panai. All right, line number 7. Le'am, mapatcha, mapecha, ha'arocha, parperet. Parperet. You see a parperet flying around in the room, let me know. Yeah. It also is a word used for dessert. Mana rona. Well, but in the top in Mishnaic Hebrew is used for meaning a dessert. Ma paperet. Okay, we're going to do one more page, and we're going to have the vowel sound of E, the chiri. It can be written one of 2 ways. It can be written as just a dot under the letter, or it can be a dot under the letter followed by the letter yud. The technical difference is when it's just a dot under the letter, it's the short form of the vowel. When it's got the yud following it, it's the long form of the vowel. In modern Hebrew spelling, often the letter yud is added to help you know that that's an E sound that you should be pronouncing. In biblical Hebrew, most of the Bible, the name of David was spelled Daled Vav Daled. A lot of modern, in Israel today, you might see it spelled Daled Vav Yud Daled. So you don't make the mistake of thinking it's Dode, uncle, but it's David, the name. Unless you're calling him Dudu. That's a nickname for David. Dudu. All right. Line number 1. Li, pi, ri, mi, be, he, e. Line number 2. Im, imai, excuse me. My mistake. I was looking up and then finished looking at the words. Okay. Second word is imi, with me. Okay. Uri, eli, libi. Line number 3. By, yeet, bayit, bay, I, yil, ayil, 4. Eton, rimon, rabim, bechorim, horim. Line 5. Elim, olamim, roim, pe'alim, rimon. Now, depending upon if you're eating it or it's being thrown at you, it's either a pomegranate or it's a hand grenade. Okay, line number 6. Mayim, bamayim, arba'im, miluim, limon. Anybody can guess what limon means? Lemon. Line number 7. Leumi, olim, orchim, perachim, purim. And the word puri, fruit. Okay. All right. We did through page 23 tonight. I'll try to do about 4 to 5 pages each night. All right. We were talking about kosher last week. Just to review real quickly, the major concepts that we had. Land animals have to have 4 cloven hoofs. They're only going to be 4-legged animals that they're going to be that way. Cloven hoofs, chew their cud. Chew their cud means they are grass eaters. They're not meat eaters. They're not carnivorous. They're all right. They're herbivores. Okay. So goats, cattle, American bison are all examples of kosher animals. Anything with claws, anything with doesn't chew its cud, like the pig or a horse, are not kosher. If it lives in water, it must have fins and scales. All right. And when it comes to birds, there are certain birds that were accepted traditionally as being kosher, and everything, and only if they have a tradition of being kosher do we eat them. Although originally biblically it seems that they're only listed the ones that weren't kosher. So most birds should be kosher, but the reality is that's how it developed, is that we only have the traditions of kosher birds. That's why some Jews will not eat turkey. And in South Africa, I believe, it was a very big, strong tradition not to eat turkey, because turkey was a bird from North America that was unknown in Europe. And so how could there have been a tradition that it was a kosher bird? I don't know. They didn't ask the pilgrims. Okay.
Is it correct to eat doves? So when I was at Masada,
Yeah, there's
they
certain.
had
Yeah, there's certain doves that can eat, certain pigeons, doves that can be eaten. Some game animal, I don't know, I don't remember. I could look it up for it. Wouldn't be very hard. The standard list. If it looks like a chicken and clucks, mostly that's a kosher bird. If it's wild, then it becomes iffy.
just so example, like I know you can't, if you want, you can't eat a vulture, but it's
Well, the vulture is one of those birds that is almost, not probably, almost certainly listed as a non-kosher bird.
it's not. Is that because of what it eats?
It has nothing, there is no, it doesn't say. You have to look in Leviticus, it just gives you a list. These birds are not kosher. it doesn't really give you a rationale. All fish are carnivorous, right? Fish eat other fish.
Right.
So that doesn't help.
You can eat salmon, but you can't eat trout.
Sure you can.
Trout's not scales. Trout doesn't have scales.
Sure it does. You ever eat a trout? You ever catch one? Do you fillet it or do you just scale it first? Trout have scales. Trout have scales. No, trout is a good kosher fish. Okay. Eels are not. Okay, well, they were a delicacy in some areas.
You like lamprey eels.
Yeah. All right. So, okay. So it lives in water, fins and scales. There are lists of kosher fish and et cetera. You find those in different places. And the birds, basically domesticated fowl, are the overarching definition. Just don't go out and hunt your own birds. Okay. Now, both birds and land animals, cattle, have to be slaughtered in a prescribed manner. They have to have the carotid artery severed. The esophagus and carotid artery are what are done. That also cuts off blood circulation to the brain, and the animal dies almost immediately. Okay. And one of the big issues we talked about last week about stunning, whether or not, at least right now, no one accepts that as being permitted for kosher slaughter. And that's why some European countries now have banned kosher and halal slaughter. Okay. Now, it also says 3 times, Lo tavashel gedi b'chalev imo. You will not cook. Bishul means cooking in liquid. An animal in its mother's milk. All right. So the rabbis understood that there are 3 levels of restriction. We may not cook meat and milk together. We may not eat it. We may not even have benefit from it. Okay? So for an animal to be kosher, it has to be slaughtered properly. Certain fats and nerves have to be removed. That's the reason why we don't eat the hindquarters, just because of the expense of doing that. And then it cannot be contaminated with milk. Now, we're going to talk about what Rabbi Allen and I, we were studying together many years ago, called the physics of kashrut. You know, physics is a science. Physics has its rules. Physics are supposed to be a objective description of reality. Kosher physics are not necessarily a description of reality, but they are prescriptive. All right. In other words, we follow them. So let's start off the first basic idea. If I cook, let's say I had, what did I have tonight? I bought it. I should remember what I had tonight. Broccoli. Okay, if I take some broccoli, put water in a pot, and boil it in the pot. And the pot's, let's say it's a brand new pot, never been used for anything. Broccoli's a vegetable. A clean new pot is a piece of metal or ceramic. Water is water. I can take that piece of vegetable and have it with a cheese a sandwich, or something fancier. I can have it with my steak or by itself. I can put a cheese sauce on it, but I can't eat it then with the meat. All right? Because that's parv. It is neither meat nor milk. If I have a new pot and now I use that pot to boil some meat, some beef. Okay, I'm making a stew and I boil my meat in that pot. There are, if you want to call them molecules, the rabbis use the word taste, tam. The meat gives off a flavor, a taste, right? We taste it, right? You taste it. That taste flows into the water, into the walls of the pot. So once I have cooked a piece of meat in that pot contains the taste of meat. Whatever metaphor you want to use. You want to use molecules, there are molecules hiding in the lining of the pot. Now I come along and I'm going to make a cheese souffle. And I want to melt my cheese. If I take that pot and I put my cheese in the pot and heat up the pot so it melts the cheese, the meatiness, the taste of the meat that was absorbed by the walls of the pot come out and enter into the cheese. And now I have a mixture of milk and cheese, and that is forbidden. That's not kosher. Now, if I had, let's say, a fairly lean piece of meat, and I put it down, and I forgot, and I put a piece of cold cheese on a piece of cold meat. Now, I can't eat them together. But because they're both cold, there's no transference. If it's very greasy, that's a problem. But it's just a slice of meat. It's not very greasy. It's not hot. I take the cheese off and I wipe the meat off very carefully to make sure no residue is there. End of the story. But if that piece of meat was on the griddle, i.e. I'm making a hamburger, and I forgot, instead of grabbing the non-dairy cheese substitute, I threw on a piece of cheddar cheese on the meat. End of story. The meat's no good. It's absorbed the flavor of the cheese. Yeah, so it's not just the contact of meat and milk together themselves, but there must be heat involved. And if a pot is used, that pot takes on the characteristic of the first item that you cook in it. If I never cook meat in it or never cook milk in it, it's no problem. It's called parv. I can cook anything I want in it. Well, any vegetable in it, have it with milk or meat. All right. So when you have a kosher kitchen, that's why you have to have meat pots and you have to have dairy pots. And, yes.
So like the non-kosher meat also transfer into the pot?
Yeah.
So it's not just the.
Well, the meatiness goes into it. It's a different issue with non-kosher meat, but yeah. Yeah. First, sorry.
Milk with fish.
Fish is separate and distinct. Yes, fish is considered to be parv. Okay. Originally, probably chicken. Well, at least some thought of chicken as being parv. Today we don't. But fish does not. You can have fish with cheese. Traditionally, we don't eat fish and meat together. That probably goes back to ancient superstitions and other things, but some people are very strict about even today, not to eat them together, not even to use the same utensils for them. But if you made a mistake, it's nothing to worry about. All right? So we have different pots that we're going to cook in, and therefore we have cutlery, because you're going to put cutlery into hot items, and that could be hot enough. What is the definition of hot? Yad soletabo. If I put my hand on it and my hand automatically jerks away, right? Your natural reflex that you're going to jerk away because it's hot, that's cooking temperature. Yad soletabo, they say. If your hand won't stay on it, that's cooking temperature. Okay. So now, when it comes to dishes, the question might be, well, if you have real hot food, though, so it's so hot that you can't really touch it, you got that sizzling steak was the commercial safe? It's not good if it's not sizzling. Some steakhouse commercial here on the TV. Chris, Chris, whatever it is. Okay.
Sizzle because they put butter.
Yeah, I know what they do. They put butter on it. Yeah. And then so it makes a fake noise. It's a true story of people who've been on airlines in the old days when they used to give you meals and you have a kosher meal and then they opened it and said, when they shouldn't, they say, look, that looks so dry, the meat. I put some butter on for you. It's happened. First of all, you don't get much anymore today in kosher meals. And if you do, they know they come to you with triple wrapped and everything else. You need a blowtorch to open the bag. Okay. So now, what happens if you make a mistake? Okay. Let's say my wife's making a nice big chicken soup. So we've got this big pot. And she puts her chicken in, and it's got to be a big pot because it's got to be lots of chicken in it. You got to boil every taste out of that chicken that's possible. And it's going to boil over if it's not, all the way to the top, and it's already spilled to the top. So it's always going to boil. Okay. So one of my grandsons is over to help, and he grabs his milk and he comes over and he's, look, you're making soup, Savta? Yeah, so we're making chicken soup. Okay, I'll look, sure. And he takes a look and some milk dribbles out into the pot. What do I do? Not so fast, Charlie. Not so fast. Okay. One of the things that I began with was the rabbis call the flavor taste of something. Tam. The taste, if you can't taste something, it's not there. So now, in the Talmud, they say, what happens? Let us say my grandson came over. My wife's making the soup. I don't make soup. She's making the soup. Milk gets into it. She says, what am I going to do? So in the days of the Talmud, he says, you go to your nearest expert non-Jewish cook. He has to be an expert. And then you say, will you taste this soup for me? Very nice. Can you tell me what are the ingredients in it? He says, well, I can taste the chicken, and there's some garlic and onions, some parsnip, and a little bit of milk. What? Oh, he's not Jewish. He's not Jewish. That's why I said you're non-Jewish cook. Okay. There's no law that non-Jews have to observe kashrut. There's nothing wrong with somebody not Jewish not eating kosher. There's no problem. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. We have no desire to make the world kosher. Okay, be nice, but that's just our benefit. But there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so because if he can taste it, it's there. Once it's no longer tasteable, it exists. Well, there are differences of opinion, but I'm going to say for our purposes, it doesn't exist. If he cannot taste it, it's not there. If it's not there, you don't have to worry about it. If he can taste it, it's no good and you got to dump it out. Now, maybe you can let him have it. Maybe I suppose you ought to let him taste it. So go have the rest of this soup. And we'll talk about the pot later. We haven't got to what to do with the pot itself. Right now, we're just talking about the soup. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know too many expert cooks of that caliber, Jewish or otherwise. Okay. Anybody here know of a cook that excellent? Okay. You can taste the milk in it? Okay. Let him show you off. Okay. For a little while, we can let you taste it and be our taster. Okay. So the rabbi said, when it comes to this kind of a mixture, since you can't find these, the experts aren't not necessarily available. If it's 1 to 60, if it's 1 ounce of milk that falls into a pot of 60 ounces of meat broth, it's okay. If it's over that 1 ounce, then it's no good. Well, no. That becomes an estimate. Obviously you have to estimate. If somebody comes, no, that's a question. No, you're not allowed to do that. Not to start with. If you cannot intentionally try to water it down, okay, you can't do that. If by accident it was done, okay, let us see. Again, using my grandson, he drops the milk in. I don't notice it. My wife's putting some more water in. Not on purpose. This is all accident. Once you do it on purpose, that's the end of the story. And that becomes an issue in kosher organizations we have to talk about, okay? And manufacturers and everything. Okay, so that's called Hebrew batel b'shishim, 1 to 60. If it is normal kinds of foods, it's not a very, very sharp taste. For example, if I have a jalapeno with the seeds inside and I put that into the soup, it's going to have to be a lot more than 1 to 60 because the sharpness of the taste. Okay, so yeah, you have to eyeball it. If it looks, let's just a drop, 1 drop of milk falls into your 2-gallon jug of soup. You don't need to, that's 1 part to 60. If you don't know, then you may have to do some measuring and then try and figure it out. And you can call your rabbi and say, Rabbi, this is what happened. The rabbi says, how much fell in? He says, I don't know. He says, the rabbi says, how much soup was in the pot? I don't know. And the rabbi says, well, I don't know what I can tell you. All right. But all right, so that's for liquids or anything that's in a liquid state. So for example, if you have something totally ground up so that it just flows, like sugar and salt, that sort of thing. What if it's not like that? Let us say there's a barbecue and my next door neighbor, non-Jewish guy, we're going to barbecue. I have my kosher grill here. He has his non-kosher grill there. I'm putting my kosher hot dogs on my grill and he's putting his Oscar Mayer wieners on his grill. Okay. And we look at, what? They look exactly alike. Eyeballing them, you can't tell the difference between my Glatt kosher, super duper kosher hot dogs and his hot dogs. And all of a sudden, we're not paying attention, and one of his hot dogs rolls onto my table, and I have 2 kosher hot dogs there, but I don't know which one is his and which 2 are mine. Now, the basic principle is what we call batel barov. As long as the majority is kosher, it's all kosher. Theoretically, you could eat all 3 hot dogs, one at a time. You couldn't eat them together. See, if you ate them all together, for sure you're eating a non-kosher hot dog. Some prefer, and that's probably the more ideal, is that you got the 3 hot dogs there, you don't know which one is kosher and which ones are not kosher. Take one and throw it away. So now you don't know if that was a kosher one or the non-kosher one. So you didn't know if it was kosher to start. You didn't know which of the 3 were non-kosher. You don't know which of the 3 you threw away. So there's even greater doubt. Therefore, you can eat the 2 that are left. But again, you shouldn't eat them together.
What hot dogs are made this for?
Not kosher ones. Not all beef. There. Well, but again, wait a minute. Your statement, while true, maybe true or false, that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. If it's not kosher, it's not kosher. It doesn't matter what made it non-kosher. It's not because there's pork in it. It's because there's beef. Maybe say it's a beef frankfurter, but it was from a cow that wasn't slaughtered kosher, it wasn't salted and everything else. So it's not kosher. It's not because of the pork content. It's the fact that it's not kosher. Well, the whole thing, everything that's involved, right? The killing, the salting, the removal of forbidden fats, all that stuff. So again, you have to be careful, and If it's no big deal, so you throw all three out in the end of the store, you don't have to worry about it. And most kosher consumers probably throw them out. But these law, the rules are made for ordinary people. And there's a famous story. Two women are coming to the rabbi Erev Shabbos, just before Shabbos. And they bring a chicken. Each one of them's bringing it. Don't bring chickens to me. I couldn't tell you if it's a kosher chicken or not. But in those days, slaughters are one of the big jobs of rabbis was to be able to tell if the chicken's kosher. So what first lady comes in, she's a poor woman. She shows the chicken to the rabbi. The rabbis, it can go either way. It could be kosher, might be kosher. There was something about the slaughter process. It could be kosher, not, it's kosher. So she goes home. Next lady comes in, same issue. Same exact issue. The rabbi looks at it, go out, it's not kosher. So his wife is saying, wait a minute. They were identical. Both chickens had the same issue. How come for the first lady it was kosher and for the second lady it wasn't kosher? The rabbi says, well, there's doubt. I couldn't know for sure 100% that it's not kosher. And since I didn't know for 100% it's not kosher, there's doubt. There's room for doubt here. And the first lady's a poor woman. If she doesn't have that chicken for Shabbos, she's not going to have any chicken for Shabbos. She can't afford to buy another chicken. The other lady, if I tell her it's treif, she'll go buy another chicken because she's got the money. So for the first woman, it was kosher, and the second woman, it was treif. So there's room when there's doubtful areas. Okay. Some things are not doubtful. If you give me one hot dog and it comes from an Oscar Mayer package, I don't have any problems. It's not kosher. And the Talmud talks about all kinds of strange situations. You got kosher meat on the table, and a bird comes by and drops a piece of meat on the table. Did the meat come from a kosher source, a non-kosher source? Where are the butcher shops? What are the most butcher shops? Are they mostly kosher butcher shops? Are they mostly non-kosher butcher shops? Yeah, we won't go into all the Talmud has lots of fun with those issues.
Kosher?
No. Remember, there are steps. Animal must be slaughtered properly with birds and cattle. Then any forbidden fats, any forbidden veins and things have to be removed. And all this, and it has to be salted to remove the blood. And then it's considered to be completely kosher. Until all those processes take place, it's not kosher. Now, theoretically, you could have, well, for example, what happens today in most abattoirs, places where they slaughter cattle, if they're doing kosher slaughter, kosher shochet, that's the Hebrew term for it, slaughters the animal. He does the shchita. Okay. They then remove what has to be removed immediately. The hind quarters, the back part, automatically goes to the non-kosher line. And then it goes on and does its life wherever it's going to do.
Usually ends up in the auger or hamburger.
It depends.
Depends on the cut, like porterhouse steak.
Well, the hind quarter. All the hind.
Down, I've been into a couple of them.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the operation. I don't know what most big ones today. Maybe they do it that way. I don't know. Right, but nonetheless, that's the theory. So now, let us say that the front quarter, I gave half of it to a non-kosher butcher. From then on, whatever he does with it is not going to be kosher because he's not going to salt it. He's not going to remove the veins or fats that need to be removed from it. So once he's got it, I have to assume it's not kosher. I can't go to the grocery store and say, I remember when my wife was teaching, I was still at rabbinical school, and one of her friends was a nice Catholic girl, never met a Jew before. And she says, well, your husband's going to be a rabbi. Can't you just go to the store and bless the meat? Right? Because that's a different view of how of the roles of the clergy. Okay. So when it comes to cross-contamination of the food item, liquids, 1 to 60 normally. If it's less than 1 part to 60, it's considered to be nullified, bitul, it's okay, provided it was by accident. If it is, if it's solid things that you cannot identify to make clear which one is kosher and which one is not, theoretically, as long as the majority is kosher, it's okay. Again, some would say you take 1 piece and get rid of it. What about the pots? Let us say, now we're going back to my first example. My wife's making the chicken soup, and let's make it a meat broth so there's no issues there. She's making what's a nice stew, a French stew with what? Not chol, no chol.
Barley soup.
I can't have barley. Anyway, so she's making beef barley soup. Okay, she's making beef barley soup. And my grandson drops a drop of milk in it, and so we go to the expert chef, my non-Jewish friend who's an expert chef, and he tastes it and he says it's fine. I said, yeah, but what's in it? And he says da 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 da. And he doesn't mention milk. Okay, I go home and we eat it. He says there's milk in it, or maybe I'll dump it off into his pot. I'm not supposed to make benefit from it, so I'm just getting rid of it. I need someplace to pour it. He just happens to have a pot there, so I pour it into his pot, and he'll dump it out later if he wants, or he'll eat whatever he wants to do with it. All right. What do I do with the pot? Okay, because the pot now has a mixture of meat and milk in its walls.
Very.
No. We'll come back to burying in a minute. All right. Since the way the pot absorbs the flavor is through the liquid, right? I cook in it in a pot. Therefore, the flavor, the tam, the molecules of meat or milk, whatever it may be that we're cooking in the problems, they flow through the water into the walls of the pot. They come out of the walls of the pot and they flow into what's being cooked in it. That's what the problem was. Okay. So if I have to let the pot sit empty, just cleaned out without schmutz in it for 24 hours. I said step 1. Okay, sorry. Step 1, I dump out the no good stuff, clean the pot out, and let it sit for 24 hours. The rabbi said food that was left out for 24 hours, a full day, becomes foul. Right? You don't want to eat meat that's been left sitting outside for 24 hours. That's called noten tam nifgam. It gives a bad taste, a bad flavor. So now, anything that will come out of that pot will be noten tam nifgam, bad taste. So what I can do is I fill the pot I fill another bigger pot. Let's start one way. Have a big pot, hasn't been used for 24 hours. I fill it with water and it's boiling, and the witches are Shakespeare. All right. And so I take that smaller pot, immerse it into the boiling water, let it sit there for a few seconds. All of the no good stuff that's been absorbed into the walls of that pot now come out into the water, and they can't go back into the other pots because they're flowing out. Once you're flowing out, you can't flow in. Take it out, and is now rendered neutral, brand new.
Is the pot you boiled the pot in now?
No, no, because you have it's a big pot and lots of water and everything else. So it's not how much flavor actually got into the walls of the smaller pot. It's really a small amount. And so when that small amount comes out into that big pot with lots more water, it's going to be less than 1 part in 60.
So how long do you have to
Just a few minutes, moments.
Not kosher meat in that pot, you also have to do that.
If you've used it, yeah. If I roast, meaning you cook at dry heat, the only way to remove the flavor is through heat. If you have a self-cleaning oven, that may be one way of doing it, putting it in a self-cleaning oven and turning it on and hope the pot doesn't get ruined. Take a blowtorch to it and hope the pot doesn't get ruined. All right. Let's deal with the easy one. Cutlery, metal cutlery. I'm sorry?
For me.
Well, they're usually, it's not a metal. Okay, and I'm not, we're talking about, your knives and forks, your metal knives and forks. If you make a mistake and you put it into cold water, cold milk, let's say, a cold spoon into cold milk, you take it out and you rinse it off in cold water, dry it, and put it away. No problem. Okay. If it's hot, now the utensil, the fork, the knife, spoon, whatever, has absorbed into it. Again, all you have to do is wait, clean it off, let it sit 24 hours, put it into a pot of boiling water. Now, the Talmud talks about, and some know about this idea that you put knives and forks into the ground and you grow new forks from the forks that you plant in your garden. The discussion, it seems to be, that was related to the issue that they didn't have real good soaps available to remove grease. And so putting it into the soil was to get the grease off, to remove the grease and fats off of the cutlery. You don't really need to put them in dirt, but you do need to go through the boiling cycle. And again, it has to be 24 hours left unused. Your oven, and we'll talk about again at Passover time, the same principle, 24 hours, and then self-cleaning is good enough to kosher an oven.
The bottom line to all of this, you're really sanitizing it, which they didn't know at the time.
Well, it is not sanitizing because it is,
Killing the germs if you're boiling it.
right, yeah, but that's not the issue.
No.
I mean,
That's not really.
sanitize, well, there's some good things in there that yeah. Yeah. But the real thing is, that's why I introduced, by using the terminology, the physics of kashrut. Okay? There are certain degrees of legitimate science behind some of these things, and there are other aspects of it that are not scientific. All right. Problem with plates, dishes. The rabbi said you could kosher metal utensils. You could kosher wooden utensils. You could not kosher pottery. When it absorbs into the walls of the clay pots, the clay dishes, the ceramic dishes that we have today, you cannot kosher those. Now, if you have dishes that are very expensive and very dear to you, you can rely on, there is an opinion of the Chacham Tzvi that is accepted by many, that if you put them away for a year unused, then you can use them again. You talk to your rabbi about it. Okay. Now, glass is a very special and difficult subject. When these rules were being formulated, the only glass known at that time was very fragile glass. One of the definitions of glass was if you put hot water in it, boiling water, it'll break. Right? You couldn't put it in boiling water. On the other hand, the rabbis also said that glass doesn't absorb. So there, generally speaking, we prefer to keep glasses for only one flavor. Either use the glasses for dairy or use the glasses for meat, not to use them interchangeably, but theoretically you could. And if you want to kosher them, because let's say you have heavy duty glassware today, which can actually be boiled. We don't do that, but we soak them in water for 3 days, taking the water out every 24 hours. It's really symbolic. It's really symbolic more than anything else. Again, you would talk to your rabbi about that. And this is the same rule for all of your utensils. If you have beaters and you use it for dairy, you can't use it for meat product. You're immersing, what are those immersing things?
Immersion member?
What?
Immersion member?
Yeah, we have 3. 1 fleshik, 1 milchik, 1 parv.
So we're having breakfast and I have my mug of coffee with cream in it.
You have a dairy mug.
Cannot use that same mug for my tea at nighttime when I'm having my roast beef dinner.
You could have it after you ate your dinner. You could have it after you ate your dinner, but you really shouldn't have it at the table with it. Now, one other caveat. Besides cooking meat and cooking dairy things, we eat them. Now, first and foremost, although there's some crazy people in the world, and you hear this especially at Pesach time, if you have dentures or implants, don't worry about it. Okay. You don't have to take your teeth out when you want to go back and forth either, right? My teeth are my teeth. I don't change teeth. All right. Now, the rabbi also, they said, when it comes, and this is true, meat takes longer to digest. Okay. And the Talmud itself never gives an exact time limit. It's clear that according to the Talmud, if I eat dairy, as long as I clean my mouth out, like just rinsing it in water, taking a drink of water, or even better, shot of schnapps if it's a dairy kiddush, okay? I can eat meat right away. If I have very hard cheese that might leave residue, then the Sephardim especially wait the length of time between meat and milk like they do milk and meat. But most Ashkenazim tradition is clean your mouth out. If it means taking, chewing, having some bread, what have you. The thing about fish, one of the customs is that when you after you have fish, you don't serve fish on the same utensils, the same place at the same time with meat. So I was joking, but that is one of very prominent customs, that when you have dairy, have fish, let's say gefilte fish, or some nice herring, at a Shabbos lunch, there's a strong tradition to have, after you eat it, have a little bit of bread and take some schnapps to clean your mouth out. If it doesn't clean your mouth out, at least you feel better. Okay. So now the reverse is different. After you consume meat, the Talmud says you have to wait till your next meal. What does that mean? Now we know, and so there are 3 customs that developed. The standard Eastern European custom was the most stringent, which was 6 hours. After you consume meat, you have to wait 6 hours before you can have dairy. The most lenient was found in some communities, especially Dutch and Western German communities, 72 minutes. Apparently, it was customary for them to have, most people in those days ate meat at lunchtime. That was the big meal. But they would have tea and something like that a couple hours later. And since they would have that, they felt that was like the next meal. So therefore they waited about 72 minutes or 2 hours and something like that. And German custom was 3 hours. A lot of conservative rabbis and conservative communities use the 3-hour rule for various reasons. And that's what I follow. Some of my children follow 3 hours, some of my children follow 6. That was the standard, and you don't go wrong with that. But but we do have different patterns of eating today, and we eat our meat meals usually at night, even if we do have meat for lunch. But so it is a balance between them. And again, you talk to your rabbi for the suggestions they might have on that. Now, to make sure all of this is handled properly when you go to the stores, I forgot to send it out. I will try to remember to send out the listing of some of the kosher symbols and everything like that. And local, if you COR, COR, has used to have cards would have some of the prominently accepted kosher symbols that they have. Now, kashrut is big business. We talked about it briefly last time. There's a lot of money that is spent in the kosher industry. For the Jewish consumer who keeps kosher, it's very important that they feel comfortable that what they're going to consume meets their standards. And various organizations in the last 100 years or so were created to supervise the mass production. The big Heinz and Whole Foods or whatever the company may be, right? That's making whatever it is they're doing, right? And so I think I mentioned last night, what happens is an agent, a mashgiach, is sent from the organization that is giving the hashgacha, the imprimatur, to that plant. They examine everything. They check out what's done there. They make sure it follows all the rules and regulations. They're allowed to come in whenever they want to do a snap inspection. They have to be able to show that all the products that they purchased meet the standards of that organization. And then they can put the seal on their product, let's say COR. All right, so COR goes to the local plant. The rabbi goes and he sees it. Okay, fine. Here's we will supply you with the right to use our copyrighted symbol. Because if you use it without our permission, we can take you to court and sue you. So they rely on the civil courts to enforce that. And so now, one organization has these standards. This other organization may have different standards. And organization A may charge X for their supervision, and the other organization will charge X minus Y. So the manufacturer has to decide who he wants to go to. Is it and is it to his benefit to go to the stricter supervision because everybody will accept it, or go to the more lenient supervision, which some people won't use, but it'll cost them less money? That's a decision they make. Or, which sometimes is the case, organization, this especially because in very Orthodox areas, you've got this standard from organization A, and you got this standard from organization B. And I don't care if A says they're kosher. I go by B. If it's not B, it's not kosher. And the guys from A say, I go by A standards. And I don't care about B. If B says it's kosher, I don't care. It's not kosher unless it's A standards. So they end up so the manufacturer may have both of them come in. And that's when you see products with 2 or 3 different hechshers on them. That's because different communities only rely upon their rabbis, their organizations. The major ones today, the OU, the Circle K, the Star K, Kaf K, and Core, get together to define the parameters, broad parameters of their standards. So they're pretty much on the same page. And so the major organizations feel comfortable using the other organizations' products in the places where they supervise, and vice versa. But you will find that in the kosher world, it can be a big problem. Cheating is known. People bring in product that is no good. We happened at Camp Ramah a couple of summers ago. They caught somebody bringing in cheese that wasn't supposed to be brought in, and under Core's nose. And so it was a conservative camp that their mashgiach caught it. A good friend of mine had a shul in Staten Island, and he, first of all, he's very observant. He was a conservative rabbi, but very observant conservative rabbi like I am, very traditional, and had a lot of training in kashrut, and he still writes about kashrut. And when he was on Staten Island, he had a problem with a local bakery. He wasn't comfortable with what they did, so he told his congregants they could not buy from that bakery. And he got a visit from a guy about 6'5", top to bottom, and one side to the other, and had a lot of vowels in the end of his name, and said, "Rabbi, mind your own business." We do know that that can happen. That because it's big business, and where criminals are involved in some of these big businesses, some of the criminality can get into it. And there are unscrupulous rabbis who give hechsher supervision, but their staff is so small, and the number of factories or plants that they give supervision to is so large, it's impossible for them to do a proper job. And in the kosher world, rarely will you see somebody say, "This is not kosher." I mean, if they had something they were doing, let's say Core was giving supervision, Core found something unkosher, they'll announce it was not kosher. But let us say Rabbi Schmendrick from Uppittsville, New York, gives a hechsher. And you go to Core and they say, "Rabbi," the rabbi at Core is Rabbi so-and-so from Uppittsville, New York, "is this hechsher kosher?" And he won't say it's not kosher, it's not recommended. See, you don't have to recommend something, but if you say it's not kosher, then now maybe he's going to take you to court and he's going to sue you, and you got to go to court. And do you really want to go to a Gentile court? And the judge is going to say, "What does it mean by kosher?" And the Rabbi A says this, and Rabbi B says that, and the judge says, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Okay. So you will find that occasionally, and surprisingly, you will find, for example, this is the example I just gave about a hashgacha where the supervising authority does not have enough personnel to be able to rely upon them. This was actually stated why their products were not being used. So they were up and up. They said, "This is what it is. They don't have enough personnel. We're not comfortable using their product. Therefore, we won't." That doesn't mean it wasn't kosher, but it's saying, right. There are some rabbis, for example, that will give hechsher to a store that's open on Shabbos. I remember in New York going by a bagel place, and in Hebrew, not Yiddish even, it was in Hebrew in the door, the sign, "Don't worry," it says this place is kosher, and don't worry that it's open on Shabbos. The owners are not Jewish. Okay, I don't know how you couldn't buy anything they baked on Shabbos, but you could, according to those rabbis, you could take what they baked during the rest of the week. Just don't buy anything too early on Sunday from them. What other caveats are there? We will talk about Pesach when we come to Pesach, because that has its own issues that they get thrown on top of it. But we used to take the group to one of the grocery stores for a field trip, and would give you a list of things for you to go find. I know the stores got a little antsy about that when we were, what are they doing roaming around here like this? But if my advice, one of the standards that is generally used by the conservative rabbis as a standard for conversion is observance of kashrut both in the home and out. Talk to your rabbi what their understanding of that is and how far that goes. Some will say, well, if you go to a restaurant and you have fish that you make sure was cooked in aluminum foil or something like that, you can do that. Others say if you eat just salad that was clearly not mixed with anything that would be wrong, you can just do that. Some might say you can have a cup of coffee since it's coming just out of the coffee machine in a paper plate cup. Different standard, and so I cannot tell you what your supervising rabbi wants in terms of the standard for kosher. You have to talk to them.
Isn't the big dean who's going to decide anything anyway? So why is the super?
Well, we used to have a central beit din, one beit din for our community, for the conservative community. And I served on that beit din frequently. Certain issues came up, and the standards that we generally followed were not always acceptable to all the other conservative rabbis in the community. So we no longer have one official beit din. Each sponsoring rabbi consults and will send you to either he himself or she herself will convene a beit din or send you to a beit din that they feel comfortable with. Okay, that's not to cast aspersions on anybody and their approaches. Different standards, different ways of doing things, and so that's why we have this system now. I think I covered all the basics. Next week, we talk about Hanukkah. And that means the following week, we have an exam. Okay. The exam will cover everything that we talked about in this term. The major items, I hope, the big, little, you have to use your judgment on that, but I don't think you will miss out on figuring out what's most important things here. It depends on how tired I get before I finish writing it. It usually runs between 60 and 100. Some are multiple choice, some are fill in the blanks, some are match, true or false, a little bit of everything. Sometimes I ask the same question twice because I missed it. Sometimes I have arguments with students on whether or not my answer is the correct answer, and I give in to them, and sometimes not. Okay. And as long as you do your best, you'd have nothing to worry about. Okay. Some people are great scholars and obviously will do very, very well. Some people aren't such great scholars and they'll do less well. But
Like the reading, certainly the materials you've got laid out in this, the reading of that.
Yeah.
Like tonight, I fully understood because I'd gone through.
Well,
it.
that's, well, that's why you really, if you read first before coming to class, it's a lot better. Wait,
Go away.
there is no minimum score.
retake it and failed, we gotta do.
You're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble, yes. What?
If you fail.
If you fail, it's a problem. The Jewish partner fails, we're gonna have to talk.
If anyone fails.
If anyone fails, the whole class fails. No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, that's handy.
Look, there's nobody here that I think is that issue. I've had people who, let's say they were not the brightest bulb in the pack. Right? Whatever metaphor you want to use, And in terms of an absolute score, they were pretty bad. But that was the best they could do. Right? And they were sincere. And they were working hard. And when it came time for the Beit Din, they went to the Beit Din and they went through it and passed. But if you're just being sloppy, and it's clear to me that you are not trying, or you haven't been paying attention, that's a whole nother different story. I can smell that out. I'm married to a school teacher. She'll tell me. Right? So, but the most important part of the test is for you to see what you've learned and what you haven't learned, what you know and you don't. That's more important than any mark or anything else. Okay.
So do we get to keep the test after? Just
Yeah. What I usually do is, what I've been doing in the past, and I probably will do it now again as well. I will send you the test in advance. You will take it at home. You're on your honor. And when you come to class, we will go over it together. And I usually give you a question sheet and an answer sheet. The answer sheet I get back, so I have and you can mark both, and you have what and we go over them together and discuss it.
So we're not doing the actual exam here on the 7th.
No, what it will be is we will do the review on the 7th. You will with a grade. Let's say we will grade it together on the 7th.
Okay.
That's how I've been doing it. Some of the rabbis aren't happy with that. They're worried you're not going to be on your honor. I think you do. They're doing you a disservice if they would think that's the case. If you get 100, wonderful.
Yeah.
How many of us were Boy Scouts?
Some of them, I've had people do ace it. I've had people ace it 100%. It's not a real difficult test. I promise. There will be some Hebrew on it. The Hebrew probably to identify the letters, sounds, and vowel sounds. That's all.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I want to ask you to translate this passage.
Yep.
I will never ask. Eventually, I might ask you to know some words, like let's say Melech, king. That might be something. Not this test. Later on down the line, I might suggest that these are words that you should know.
Are you allowed to do the test with your partner?
No,
I was going to ask you that.
you are supposed to each individually do the test. Not everybody's always observed that properly. The idea, look, again, we could say just the student has to take the test. But we like the idea of both parties taking the test when there's a couple, because it also reminds you where you are catching on and not. And I've had people come to me and say, I went to chat and I didn't know this. Chat is the Hebrew high school here, and they learned something in my class. Rabbi Allen's.
Well, Hartley has already said how much he has learned from this.
All
He
right.
didn't know before.
Okay. Well, we'll try to make it even more.
Why not?
Why not? Okay.
That's why I
And
support
it's-
it.
Yeah.
No, it's better when you speak about groceries.
Rabbi, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Have a great night.
You're up in the grocery. Remember, I grew up, my family was always in the grocery business.
Uh-huh.
What you're saying is you do always check your labels.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
part of the business.
yeah. Well, also, there are different things, you know, there are stories about, the product. You don't have, it's not out, you have the kosher one, so wait a minute, goes in the back, brings the label and stack. What's on, all right. When I was rabbi in El Paso, Texas, I went to the local dairy and they ran a run of milk before Passover. And I had a little thing that was attached to it saying that was done, produced before Pesach, and it was kosher for Passover. That was the standard back then for years.
My father, if he was still alive, could tell you stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell
Oh,
you
you'd be able to
stories,
tell you a few stories about that stuff.
And time, of course, do we have to run through kind of what the bacon process is like?
I can talk
Okay,
about it.
babies.
Yeah, certainly towards the end, I go over it a couple of times.
Yeah.
But what is the timing between like,
That's definitely up to your, responsibility.
it depends on when they're free to organize.
Well, but part of it may be that, part of it, some rabbis want to do a little bit more after the courts is open.
Yeah.
That's their style, and that's fine. Some rabbis say, we've been meeting, we've talked with each other over the course of the year. You finish the class, I'm comfortable with that, let me just arrange for the date in, however that individual handles it.
Yeah.
All right, and like that, I often sit on the bench, so I'm sure I would sit on, but I don't know. Like I said, there are certain areas that are problematic that you don't need to go into.
Yeah.
In different standards, and so, every rabbi has what they feel they have to do or not do. And so that's the way you handle it. So, I forget, who are you working with?
Yeah, I see.
Rabbi Seed, okay. Rabbi Seed is an old timer. Rabbi Seed would probably send you to Rabbi Allen, who was in the past, the head of the court. He usually gives me a call, some of the Beis Din, which means you're out of luck.
And does our sponsoring rabbi also stay on?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily at all, because there's a conflict of interest to a certain extent. And frankly, and to be fair, it's time consuming. Gotta have some time for it. What we usually do is we meet at the mikveh itself. And we will have a number of students who are scheduled, because they're trying to do it in groups. So let's say 3 or 4 students at a city. Each one comes in separately, each one is the extended an appointment for that day in the middle. So it just depends on the number, who's handling it, who's running it. It could be they say, okay, you come at 9 o'clock. And we have 4 students who we're at about 15 to 20 minutes for each one, so that's about 80 minutes. So if you come at 9, if you pass through the Beis Din, 11 o'clock you're probably going. So go to the grocery store or go shopping or what have you at the Beis Din, or you can sit around and wait. That's pretty much how it goes. Well, yes, the individual is there by himself, the department not. And then the rabbi, I'll go over this next time, but rabbis usually ask some questions of knowledge. Very nice if you know when the next holiday is, if you want a little extra, you know what day the Hebrew calendar is that day. But the most important element, and I will share this with class a number of times, is they're trying to be sure you're sincere. Yeah, the Beis Din I usually sit on, we want to know you're keeping kosher. We want to know you're doing everything you can to observe Shabbat holidays, that you are involved with the synagogue to the best of your ability.
Meaning like you're a member.
Or at least you go to shul. We want you to be a member of a shul. Whatever shul you go to, whatever the shul is your choice, that's fine. We want that, but you can't be a member of most shuls right now. Okay, so of course you can't do this, but you can be preparing for it. And the idea is if you go to the mikveh, that and you come out, you're a Jew, and you gotta behave like it.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it. And so the most important elements is know the stuff that you for life. Right? We've had cases where we said, you know what, it's not there yet. It's not here yet. Okay. And we think you need to think about this, about, let's do that in a couple of months. Rarely do we turn somebody down flat, and we have, because they're a problem. More likely, don't get fun stuff. I talk to them, get these issues cleared up, and then we'll meet with you again.
And so like an issue would be like not speaking for us, not.
Yeah, it's like, well, you know what, Rabbi, we're doing the best we can at home, but when I go out, I have a handle. Oh, that's not. If I go out, Rabbi, I just order a salad. And do my best, or vegetarian at least, I do what I can. I just have to, I can't just go to restaurants or whatever the thing.
I mean,
Yeah, we'll make arrangements. When you go to the house, they're having roast pork, going to pork, we make sure we have consistent something. I'm sorry, Rabbi, I think it's done. I just know what I'm gonna do.
so.
That's not an issue, doctors are important elements who are necessary in advice. We recognize that doctors are going to work on time to time and job is but if they're not, there's nobody else up there. No. So, some people prefer to they just can't get off the phone. So people sometimes. So when it's not, so I have to work Friday. But I can't think of the job. I'm gonna try my thinking. When you start Saturday morning. Yeah, I'm off. Go to school.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as
You're doing what you can.
and you're doing your best and you really are striving. If there's a problem, we understand. Problems exist and, we have to work towards it.
Yeah.
But if some people work, they have to work Shabbos morning. Friday night, they can make it to school. All right, so it may not be ideal to go to Friday night. But have Shabbos dinner at home. But when you come home late, I can't get home before candle lighting. All right, so but when you come home, you have a Shabbos meal.
Yeah.
These are things that's where we make difference from our Orthodox college. We recognize that not everybody has got that. That's that. We hope someday you'll be there. Yeah. If you're on the road, on the path, that's important. Yeah, okay.